Why am I vegan? That's the biggest question I get all the time. Why are you vegan, Mike? Why? Why? Because people are just so curious as to why I'm vegan. It's crazy to them. So let me go ahead and explain to you my story and why I'm vegan today. So it all began in the spring of 2018. It was spring break. I was free to do what I wanted. But a few weeks earlier, at the time, my uncle passed away. We were really close, and this was one of the first deaths in my family that was really that close to me. So it kind of made me realize how fragile life is, because he was relatively young. Up to that moment, I wasn't really aware that life can go that easily. That event really made me change my mindset. So I started to travel more. I began to travel more across the country. And reflecting on my uncle's death, I realized that I wanted to make sure that I was prosperous health-wise. So in the summer of 2018, I began to research a lot more, dive into more research about nutrition, different diets that would perhaps, make me healthier. I really started to become concerned about my health, as well as the fact that I was feeling a bit sluggish at the time. I wasn't feeling my best. I wasn't feeling optimal. So I wanted change. So I began to research, the best diets for health. And geez, there was so much information out there. I was bombarded by so many papers and thousands of doctors and nutritionists around the world. It's staggering the amount of information is on health out there. But the more I dived into it, the more I found that it was consistently the plant-based foods that were more healthier. Greens, fruits, vegetables, things like that. Those consistently were at the top of the charts. They were the top recommendations for most doctors and nutritionists. But at the time, I enjoyed meat and dairy. I enjoyed seafood especially. I wasn't too big on steak, but I did like things like eggs every morning. I had eggs. I like to have chicken. I like to eat cheese. And those are some of the things that I ate, and I thought nothing of it. I thought it was perfectly fine. I thought it was it was naturally part of my diet, that we're supposed to have it. I thought nothing of it. The more I learned, though, the more I realized that we actually don't need meat. Meat is actually not required in our diets. But I still thought in the back of my mind that there's got to be some reason why we need meat. Plus, I thought that vegetarians were just weak and overreactive, right? And vegans, I didn't even know about veganism. I didn't know what veganism was. But I kept researching and I kept finding more and more that plant-based diets were more healthier, that they were better for us. So I figured that I'd just try eating without meat for a couple weeks, see how it goes, and then I'd be back to normal in a couple weeks. I thought that was the plan. But that day, I purchased a feta cheese salad, a big one for dinner, that I was going to eat later on that night. But I kept researching. I was so enveloped in this nutrition. I kept learning more and more. I kept learning more about plant-based diets, learn about agriculture. And that night I was researching animal agriculture. I was, trying to figure out where the best sources of food were, the best sources of meat was. And I stumbled across a link to factory farming. Out of curiosity, I clicked the link to learn more about it. And there it was, a video of the inside of a factory farm. It was dark. I saw several cows standing there with mud on their faces, mud on their bodies, mud that looked not new and fresh mud, but like old mud that's been there for weeks, months. And this is something I've never seen before. I've never seen the inside of a factory farm. I didn't even know what they were. But then I kept watching the video. I began to realize how depressed these poor cows looked. They looked so depressed and sad. They were tightly packed, tightly squeezed together. They could barely move. And I was like, this is terrible. But then I saw a factory farm worker come in, and I realized that they were actually in line to be slaughtered. I saw them raise the cow up on the rack, upside down, their two hind legs first. The worker stunned the cow's heads, and the factory farm worker began to slice open the body of that poor, helpless cow. The saddest part was that some of the cows were actually kicking while they were being slaughtered. They're kicking their legs. Some of them were conscious while they were being dismembered. That was the moment I decided to shut off the iPad. I threw it, and I walked over to my dogs, who were sitting there inside. And I remember just being so deeply disgusted at what I just saw. And I looked at my dogs in the eyes, and I looked closely at their eyes, their yellow-brown eyes that were just glowing. And as I looked in their eyes, I remembered all the memories I had with them. How we grew up literally together. They were puppies when we got them. And now they're adults. And 12 years of life with them that we share together, all the memories and all the reasons why I love my dogs. My mind was playing it all back. And I realized that there was a personality behind these dogs, these animals. They weren't just animals. There was an entire personality, almost human-like personality to them. Their own thoughts, their own feelings, their own emotions, their own habits, their own style. In that moment, I realized that the harm and suffering that we're causing to these animals that we eat are needless. There's no need for them. There's no need to cause all this cruelty to the animals. So, comes to dinner time, I was eating that feta cheese salad. I remember taking a few bites of it and going, what am I doing? Right? Cheese comes from cows. And look what happened. Look what I just saw, right? I made the connection for the first time that what we're eating is actually causing that harm. So for the first time, what once used to be this harmless, tasty piece of cheese now became a symbol of cruelty and harm. So that was when the first connection was really made there. That has since never left me. That experience has since never left me. The next day, I became a vegan. The next day, I became a vegan and I started to not eat any animal products ever again, intentionally since that day. That's it. That's all that it took to really change my mind and change my mentality and change my lifestyle. It wasn't a logical argument. It wasn't an argument, or it was really that emotional connection. I think that's what people resonate with. That's just how we are as humans. But the point is that there is a stark hypocrisy among us that I realized, that I noticed. And because we're so disconnected to the animals, we typically gloss these things over. We don't see the harm, we're not exposed to it, we don't think anything of it. If I say I love animals, I love dogs, and I go around and I say, well, these animals, these cows and pigs, even though they're morally the same, let's treat them worse, right? That's hypocrisy. I realize that there's no difference between dogs and cows. There's no difference, morally speaking. There is no morally relevant difference between the two. Both animals are equally compassionate, able to emote, feel, have thoughts, dreams, right? Family. We're both sentient. All animals are sentient. So if all animals are sentient, we should consider all of them within our ethical frameworks. If we're going to be consistent in our ethics. And that's why I'm vegan. So in the beginning of the story, when I talked about my uncle passing away, that event made me aware of how precious life is. I reflected on that. I kind of soaked it in, how precious life is. That was pretty much the motivating factor that kind of expedited the process into veganism. Really that love for life. And that is something that you need to be vegan. Hell, you need it for compassion, right? In order to be compassionate towards somebody, you need to see the value in their life. And just as all humans have value, so do all animals have value, because they're living, sentient beings capable of much more than we give them credit for. And the more I've learned about animals since then, the more I fall in love with life, the more I fall in love with sentience, our consciousness, the more I realize how delicate we are as sentient beings, how delicate every animal is. There is this underlying factor here, right? This love for life. So today, this is what I try to convey in my debates. If you notice, I try as hard as I can to connect people back to the animals, connect us back to nature, connect us back to who the animals are. They're not just these objects, that they are these sentient, compassionate beings as we are. And I know it's easy to just gloss it over and say, well, I don't care. They're just, I like steak, I like beef. But my story is to show you that anybody can change, right? It all takes this little bit of this and a little bit of this, right? A little bit of thinking and a little bit of heart to go, hey, maybe what I'm doing is wrong and there's no need to eat animal products. Maybe what I'm doing is not necessary. There you go, guys. I hope you enjoyed this story. Watch my vegan debates. I have lots of videos and content about veganism, so check it out. Thanks all for being here. Have a good day. See you next time.